How's it going, everybody? My name is Ged. This is Fabulous Flix. With me, as always, is Tyler. And I got to say, before we even get going, I don't know if I can emotionally handle the rest of this series. How's it going?
Yeah,
Man?
it's to that point. I read some tweets before I even watched it, and I felt like I kind of not ruined it for myself, but I almost like already mentally prepared for a gut punch.
Oh,
So it wasn't
God.
it wasn't as bad as episode 3, but it was obviously we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So, I guess first things first, hats off to you, HBO. You continue to absolutely knock this out of the park. So we pick up this episode in Kansas City. We meet the infamous, the notorious, the ruthless Henry. Got to
Yes.
tell you, not what I was expecting. So tell me about your first impressions of, because let's be honest, I mean, the leader of the resistance made Henry out to be a literal war criminal.
Yep.
Like the worst of the worst, a brutalizer. And then you meet Henry. Tell me your thoughts.
You know, people don't like snitches.
I've heard
You know,
something about they
yeah.
get stitches,
Yeah, I
not
think
or
that's
end
what
up in
happens.
ditches.
Yeah, he wasn't as portrayed. You know, did he do something that obviously pissed Kathleen off to the point where she wanted to destroy him? Yes, and even I find Joel, when he finds out that Henry was actually an informant, he was like immediately he's like, well, I don't work with people like you.
Yep.
Until he heard his story on like why he had to do it. So it kind of brings up an interesting, you know, thing about, they're both Henry's a older brother looking out for a younger sibling, and Joel's obviously looking out for Ellie, and he can tell there's a line in there about, I'm paraphrasing, but about basically doing bad things for your kids
Yeah.
and justifying that way. And he looked at him. You know he's talking about Ellie because he didn't know that Ellie wasn't his daughter, but you know deep down
Yeah.
he's really talking about his daughter from, who died at the, at ground or day zero, right? So
Yeah. I mean, he literally
yeah.
says it. You might not be her father, but you were someone's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that brings up a point before we move on at all. Like, I realize we're talking about a very theoretical, very fictional thing, but like
Yeah.
you are a father, right?
Yeah.
You have kids. There has to be a moment of someone who loves cinema, who loves film, who watches this sort of stuff. Like, do you ever ask yourself, like, would I do the same? Would I
Well,
be willing to do what he did in order to get the medication to save his
yeah.
younger brother, or you can say his child's life? Like, would you?
It's
A father's love has
yeah.
no limits, apparently, right?
It's the one plot device that really works with humanizing villains. You know what I mean? Like almost making like the anti-hero. And I just like, I talk about Star Wars a lot. Like, why did Anakin become Darth Vader? He thought he could save Anakin and his unborn child from dying, right? Like he
And
saw them
Padme, yep,
dying and
yep,
and then thought I will do anything in my power to protect them.
of course.
And he went on a completely he became pure evil. But there's shades and levels to it, and you see
Hmm.
it with Joel and you see it with Henry, the levels they're willing to go to protect the ones they love, right?
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say any father would do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like law,
Any
right and
father who
wrong.
cares.
Like, what's that?
Any father who cares.
That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So we
It
find
doesn't
out.
have to be a father. It could be a mentor, like a great friend, like,
Hmm.
like it just, human compassion for someone else will drive people to do whatever it takes to protect the ones they love, right?
Absolutely. Um. So yeah, I thought that was fantastic. You see a lot of instability from Kathleen in this episode. like hanging out in her childhood bedroom, like,
Yeah.
and the thing that really got me in there was how she basically said that her brother, who was killed, literally would have been disappointed in her seeking revenge. She full out admitted that he would want her to forgive,
Yeah. And she's like, I'm not that person.
and she's not that person.
Yeah.
What any thoughts on this at all? I mean,
Um, Kathleen was an interesting character.
mhm,
And I don't know what it was. And I'm not saying I didn't like the character. She was just very different. And I think it was part of the way she was portrayed was like, it was like really like, what's the word? Like unsettling calmness. You know what I mean? Like, I just,
sociopathic almost.
yeah, it was like, it was very, yeah, a unique take on a character who wielded that much power and anger, but to
Hmm.
also kind of be like, just kind of so mellow and calm doing terrible things, right? So it was interesting.
Yep. And before we get to the end, like I guess the big fight scene, anything you want to touch on before we kind of, because there's two things obviously I want to touch on after this. One is the big crazy battle, and then obviously the
Yeah.
end.
Um, yeah, no, I thought okay, this is one thing I appreciated from the show. I felt myself getting a little bit lost about, what's Fedra doing, what's this group, like how does it all work? And a lot of the times you don't want shows to kind of over explain things, but I was kind of grateful they did have those two lines that really hammered home what happened here. Like Fedra was basically like the Kansas City Fedra was basically, they were like what they call them, mobsters or mafia, and they were
Yeah.
basically torturing people, killing people, and eventually they rose up and took them out. And because they were treated like that, that's why now Kathleen's group acts like that. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate that little bit of subtext because it helped explain a little bit better why they attacked Joel and Ellie right away, why
For sure.
why they wanted Henry so bad. So that was probably my only other note for the first half of the episode.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually really really good observation.
Yeah.
So then we get to like they nailed the ability to have, because a lot of times in these episodes you have something that pulls at the heartstrings,
Yeah.
something that has a gut punch, or you have some great action. They absolutely crushed it in this episode with the sniper from up top, Joel taking him out,
Yeah.
and then the scene. I
Yeah,
mean,
watching that, I'd love to see. I know people are doing the side by side the video game. The way that scene played out just screamed like video game cutscene. You know what I mean?
oh
The
yeah,
way when the truck sank, like the setup was just like
it was
felt
literally a
like a
cutscene.
cinematic. Yeah, it felt like a
Yeah.
cinematic. So I'd love to see if that's how exactly it went down. But and it, by no means did that cheapen it. It like I was watching it. It was awesome.
Hmm.
But talk about they were really in trouble, and then obviously they were still in trouble. But the zombie horde, which again is it's great writing too because it ties into the beginning on how they put them all underground
Yep.
and no one had seen them for years, right?
Yep.
So
And then they saw the murmur when they were looking for them, and
yeah,
then Kathleen's right hand man asked if they should report this, and she said no. Like she willingly ignored it. We had
yeah,
a viewer on a couple of weeks ago named Knox, if I remember correctly, who clearly had gone through the game in detail. So I'm actually kind of hoping that Knox would be on for this,
oh
because it'd
yeah,
be interesting to know how that paired up side by side, right?
yeah,
Um, yeah, it was a legitimate great video game fight scene, some great cut scenes.
yeah, just absolutely just chaos. And then
Yeah.
I don't know what the name of it is. Is it a bloater? I think I saw it written somewhere, but we saw basically the super infected, that massive dude come up and just start just crushing people. Basically
Yeah,
impervious to bullets.
yeah, and I like that for the show. I like it because it was fun.
Well, it screams video game. It screams like that must have been the boss for that scene. You know what I mean? Like that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so we got our third type of zombie or infected, right?
We
So
got
we got the
we got the
clickers,
normal clickers,
whatever
and
that
then
big guy is
the
in the
puffer.
normal. Yeah.
And then I thought the way that Kathleen died was beautifully poetic, getting jumped on at the end.
And if you notice, it was a child zombie, and she had that line earlier to Henry about kids die all the time, like just was so heartless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice for her to, pay that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then the end.
Yeah. And this is, I was like, I alluded before, I had been kind of tipped off that it was going to be a very sad episode. And when everyone survived that scene, I was like these four aren't leaving this hotel room, whatever they're holed up in, alive. So something's going to happen. And sure enough, we get it in probably the most devastating way possible.
Yeah. Ellie forms such a bond with Sam. Hearing Henry say like he hasn't heard him laugh in forever. They're reading comic books, they're playing soccer, like it's so positive. You're just waiting for the bottom to drop. I thought that it was silly, obviously, but very poetic that she, that Ellie tries to cut her hand, rub her blood into Sam, hoping that would help. Obviously, if there's a slight hole there, it would make sense for her to let everybody know.
Because she really jeopardized everyone's lives by not doing anything. Like logically, that part didn't make sense. But like you said, poetically, they mentioned earlier in their thing when the old guy's talking to Henry, like is he scared or whatever? And he's like, he's scared because you're scared. He needs to know you're not, right? Because he kept asking that, and then he asks Ellie, like, are you scared? Right. And she I think she does a great job in her response and everything like that. And then you see why he's scared when he reveals he's been bit. And I just thought it was a great job by her showing, oh, look at me, I've been bit too, I was fine.
Yeah.
And then he's like,
she said she's scared to be alone.
Yeah. And then he said, will you stay with me? And she stays with him for the night. Like, again, very touching, but does not make logical sense. But yeah. And then we get the little zombie muncher in the morning.
Yeah, we get a scene that is.
Were you surprised with how quick Henry just put him down?
Well, I think he put him down instinctively. I think he put him down without thinking.
It felt like very much like a reaction, yeah.
And then that moment of what did I do? And because I hadn't watched anything, like I got the full gut punch in the moment. And then he quickly turns around, takes his own life.
I got a feeling this show is not going to be a very happy show.
No. I mean, there's a lot of overarching messages in the show. Sacrifice is definitely one of the big ones.
Yeah.
But this is a show that had it all. It had some light comedy, Ellie chirping Joel when they're talking about going to Wyoming. She's like, here's how this is going to start. He's going to say, no way, blah, 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 blah. And then, and then I'm going to say, well, here's what's going to happen. Then at the end, you say, all right, fine. But
their relationship has definitely been developing nicely. That is, again, I don't know what happens at the end of those games, but the way it's, I don't know, like if they want to really deliver a gut punch, like they'll be able to.
Yeah, for sure. John, thanks for the hello. Appreciate you tuning in, pal. So I mean, as morbid as this is to say, I don't know if there was a better outcome after what happened. I mean, obviously Henry would be unfunctional after the decision he had to make. And again, he had to make that decision because of maybe the tiniest plot hole in the episode, which was she did not let them know.
Yeah.
The other thing I found odd was when she woke up, he was just sitting there. He hadn't attacked her already.
Yeah, so I wonder if that was because she was completely still. You know what I mean? They tend to kind of react
To movement.
more.
Yeah, it's funny
Maybe that's
because
why. I don't know.
I thought that was a bit of an issue. If anyone's
Yeah.
watching, because there's a few people on now who have played the game. Tyler and I have not. For anyone that has not watched,
Yeah.
but when Ellie wakes up and she sees Sam at the end of the bed, obviously he's deaf, but does that make sense? Like, are they drawn to movement? Is there any other reason, if anyone wants to chime in here, as to why Sam didn't instantly attack her beforehand?
Oh,
If
you know
anyone,
why? You know why I think that? I just watched Train to Busan, which is a Korean zombie film, and
Mhm.
they were movement based zombies.
Yeah,
So that's why that's in my brain. So maybe that's not the case, but it would make sense if she was just still in the bed, and when he turned, he may, once he was kind of out of his mind, he might not have realized she was even lying in there.
yep. And he was also deaf, so he would not be able to
Yes,
hear her
that
either. So
is
I
true.
guess
Yeah,
there's a couple different options there,
yeah,
but you knew when she woke up and he's facing the other way. I don't
yeah.
know. We
You
knew it. I was like,
knew.
oh
Yeah,
shit.
you knew right away he was gonna be.
Here we go.
Yeah,
But yeah, poetic. I love the move at the end where they bury them both, and then she's not really dealing with this. She's not really giving herself closure.
yeah,
She's not giving herself a chance to grieve. The note of "I'm sorry." Oh God,
yeah.
it was that was a little bit of a tearjerker for sure. And then which way is west?
Yeah.
And then they start moving.
You know what else is probably going to happen, which they didn't really touch on at all, but the rest of the people in KC are going to be in for a rude surprise when the zombie horde comes walking down the road, not expecting it.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that, I guess. Like there was a drove of them going back to the
A
city.
lot, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that city's in trouble.
The city's in a lot of trouble.
Considering all their fighters just got destroyed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, do we want to rate this?
Sure.
For anybody who's not watched before, Tyler and I are very, very, very tough graders. Anything in the 7s is a good show. 8 means we were pretty moved. There's been a total over. Sam was. Ooh. I'm going to show this. John just jumped into Sam was humming before he attacked, probably because he couldn't hear. He was trying to understand because he was out of his mind at that point. Interesting. Yeah, good call. Yeah, so if you haven't watched before, we rate pretty high. I think of every show we've ever rated, there's been 4 that have been in the 9s. So, yeah. Tyler, what is your rating on this episode?
It's as good as the premiere. I don't think it was as good as episode 3. It was better than episode 4. Yeah, I probably gonna stick with a 9.5.
I can't. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine rating anything anywhere near episode 3, which for anyone out there watching who sees these, I rated 9.8.
I think
it was
so.
Obscene,
yeah,
but I'm with
9,
you.
7,
I'm with you as a 9.5 on this one. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
This was a virtually perfect episode. It had everything from action to fun to character development. You had a gut punch at the end that if you didn't spoil it online for yourself, I mean, my God, did it get you?
Yeah,
so,
it literally had a bit of everything with a lot of focus on the best elements. So
yeah,
no
it was extremely well done.
Yeah.
Wow, there you have it. First, I don't know if we've had a show that has had 2 9s in one season.
Yeah, like I rated Andor pretty highly, and I still think very highly of it. And I wonder if my thoughts will even change more positively to it. But this show is so far,
crazy.
It's been great. It's great.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see you Wednesday, Tyler, on your channel, where we will be watching the newly renewed, rejuvenated Bad Batch. It's nice to see that making the corner. So anyone who checks us out, for those of you watching now, if you want to tune in, Tyler, the Rogue Leader, guy's got 17 bajillion more followers than I do. But for those of you that took the time to check us out tonight, I really appreciate it. In the fine words of a great human being, you could be anywhere in the world right now, and you chose to be here with us. So we appreciate you. We will see you on Wednesday, Tyler.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, we'll see you Wednesday night, pal.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.